All right. Everyone's so prompt today. Thank you. All right. So if, looks like it is now 1 o'clock, or the meeting is back in session. And if I could have Uni do a roll call to establish quorum.
Okay. Member Brandvine,
Here.
Dr. Garcia,
Present.
Dr. Kawaguchi,
Here.
Member Linden is here, Dr. Pruitt,
Present.
Member Sims,
Present.
Dr. Turetsky,
I'm here.
and Member Yu.
I believe he's trying to log on right now.
Okay. In the meantime, Member Moridomi
Here. Here.
and Dr. Wong.
Present.
And I will see if Member Yu is here.
I think Shara is trying to help him log on at this point.
Okay.
If we could maybe give him a minute or two so that he could join us for our afternoon session today. Checking to see how the progress is going.
This is the moderator. It looks like he's in now, so from him up to a panelist. And Donald, can I get a quick mic check from you? This is the moderator. Donald, if you are speaking, your microphone is currently muted. I see that you're unmuted. Can you try muting and then unmuting one more time and then trying it again?
Sorry, you think I'd figure this out by now?
Oh, nope, I hear you now. I think there's been an issue with
No, it's me.
tablets recently. No, I had this issue with Dental Board yesterday, so. But thank you.
So I believe roll call is still open. Member Yu. If you want to just state you're here.
Sorry, I'm here.
Okay, great. So all members are present and we have a quorum.
All right, well then let's go ahead and get started. We are now going on agenda items 11A through 11D, the executive officers report.
Oh, I'm so sorry. President Wong, we have switched the, we're at item number 3. If you did want to go ahead and do introduction, yes.
All right, so
I apologize.
Since Donald actually gets to join us now. So I think on behalf of all of us on the board, I just wanted to welcome you to the board. Donald was appointed by Speaker Anthony Rendon to serve a 4-year term. So if you just wanted to introduce yourself to everybody.
Sure. Great to meet everybody. Sorry I'm late. I just recently joined the board and I had some work conflicts this morning. So looking forward to working with everybody. By way of background, I'm currently Investigations Counsel at Northrop Grumman. Before that, I was in-house counsel at UCLA Health for a few years, and before that, I was an assistant U.S. attorney in Los Angeles for about 10 years, handling primarily healthcare fraud investigations. So again, great to meet everybody. Looking forward to working with you. Looking forward to working with you all.
Great, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the second part of my report, I just wanted to talk about the Dispensing Optician Committee, or the DOC, which is a statutorily required committee that advises the board and makes recommendations regarding regulations of opticianry. The committee is currently comprised of 5 members, one who is an RDO or a registered dispensing optician, one who is an SLD or CLD, so a spectacle lens dispenser or a contact lens dispenser. There are also 2 public members on the DOC and one who was a member of our board, and that is currently Dr. Kawaguchi, who is a member from the board. As of June 1st, 2021, the DOC only has 3 members, all of whom are serving their grace period. So we as the board would strongly like to recommend and encourage anybody who is interested and eligible to apply for the openings, because the DOC has not been able to meet since they don't have enough members.
And that would be, just to piggyback, anyone who has an active CLD or SLD registration here in California or works for a registered ophthalmic device dispensing business.
Thank you, Shara.
Oh, can I make a comment? I noticed on the board's website, right on the home page in the very top, it says, if you're interested in being a board member, click here. I didn't see the RDO positions opening mentioned on that. Is it possible to maybe feature it more prominently on the website?
Just going to look. Yes, most certainly. Let me take a look at what we have up there now. And we'll. Yes, of course. Yes, we can certainly change that text so that it is more clear that we're looking for a registered optician, someone being a CLD, SLD, or working for an RDO. Thank you, Member Linden.
Okay, and then also before we go on, just to piggyback on all of this, I wanted to request to all of our optometrists that are in California, just regarding optometric assistance, we currently are looking for subject matter experts. So if you have optometric assistants in your office, we encourage them to email the board so that they could be subject matter experts and be part of the survey and the workshops relating to optometric assistance right now.
And just to piggyback, unfortunately, it would be a bit of a conflict of interest if we asked our current board members to send their optometric assistants to us for the survey and the workshop. But please, of course, ask an OD who does work with optometric assistants, and encourage them to contact the board with their contact. Encourage them to have their optometric assistants contact the board, and we will make the survey and workshop of information available to them.
Lillian, may I ask you a question getting back to the dispensing optician committee?
Mm-hmm.
I heard somebody say that we do not have a quorum.
I don't think I'm sorry, it's my fault. I don't think they've been able to meet because they haven't been able to meet quorum on any meeting dates. Glenn, is that correct?
Sorry, as far as I know.
Okay, but we have enough to make a quorum if the meeting dates would work.
Yeah, so it's a committee of 5, and there's 3 members right now. So all 3 would have to be there in order for there to be quorum.
Right.
So we would, and then all 3 members right now are in the grace period. So we would actively encourage anybody who's interested in applying, because we would like to have a DOC. Plays an important role. Okay, on that note, let's go ahead and move on now to items 11A through 11D, the Executive Officer's Report.
Thank you so much, members. You know that at each board meeting, I take this opportunity to allow our subject matter experts on our staff to tell you about the work that they do each day and the performance metrics that they are meeting and working to exceed. We'll start this meeting's report with our enforcement program statistics and a continuation of our presentations on enforcement material. Part of our strategic plan, of course, that we are doing at every quarterly meeting, presentations to the board regarding the enforcement process and the disciplinary process, so as to solicit feedback from the board We are developing training modules and a handbook specific to enforcement for optometry that at the end of our strategic plan will be made available to new board members, also to existing board members as reference. But we appreciate your attention and your engagement today so that we can continue to improve upon our presentations to you each quarter and create a strong board member based and informed handbook and training module for those new members who will join you. With that, I'll pass it off to Brad Garding, one of our longest serving enforcement analysts with the board.
Hello, board. This is Brad Garding, and I'm presenting the disciplinary process as a training tool for all the members. I'm not sure how we're going to do the slides. Can I just say to the next slide and it'll go that way?
This is the moderator. When you want me to advance the slide, just say next slide.
Okay, thank you. All right, next slide. All right, so the beginning of the disciplinary process starts when we get a complaint. Well, actually, that's not the discipline process, but that's what starts the whole thing in motion. And we already went over the complaint process as we did in the last board meeting. So we receive the complaint. The analyst investigates the complaint. Any of the violations can be confirmed and substantiated. If they're egregious enough, we'll want to take that case to the Attorney General's office, where we can file a accusation if it's against a licensee. If it's an applicant who has some convictions or some previous discipline from a different state, we can file a statement of issues. We'll get more into that in a little bit. After that is filed and we get a notice of defense back from the respondent or the applicant, our DAG, our Deputy Attorney General, will first try to work out a settlement, and if a settlement can't be reached, it'll go to an administrative hearing where it'll be heard by an administrative law judge. And once we either get a settlement that the board agrees to, or staff and our Attorney General agree to, we get a decision back from an administrative law judge. It'll go to the board for vote, and once that decision is adopted, we'll get a decision in order, and then that's when the actual disciplining of the license will start. Next slide, please. So what are considered some serious violations? So for optometrists, we'll look at things like gross negligence. Anything involving patient harm can be considered serious enough to attempt to revoke the license. Incompetence, they're just not able to practice their profession that to a level that ensures consumer protection. Well, that would be cause for sending it to the Attorney General's office also. Sexual misconduct or sexual harassment, if we can prove those things, that's also cause. If there's a misdiagnosis or a failure to refer that leads to some kind of patient harm, permanent visual injury, something to that effect. Or if we see a pattern of misdiagnoses, if we get a series of complaints that shows that they're just not able to pick up on certain pathologies or eye conditions that need further care. That's something also. Fraudulent billing and criminal convictions. There's only a few types of criminal convictions that there's certain levels of criminal convictions that we look at. We don't look at infractions, but misdemeanors and felonies we'll look at, and if they're, again, egregious enough, they'll warrant us sending it to the Attorney General's office. All right, next slide. All right, so how the board, the analysts and staff handle those cases where we can substantiate the violations. We'll in-house, we'll present or prepare a transmittal memo that'll go along with all the supporting documents, and we'll send it to the Attorney General's office and request disciplinary action be taken against that individual or business. So just so we're clear on the terms, accusations. That'll be an initial formal discipline document that are filed against licensees or registrants, and statements of issues are filed against applicants. And we will only file a statement of issues if we've denied an application, and then the applicant has appealed that denial. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so after it gets to the Attorney General's office and an accusation or statement of issues has been filed, if the Attorney General can work out a settlement, we'll work out a stipulated settlement, or if we can't come to a conclusion, it'll go to an administrative hearing, and possible outcomes will be the actual formal discipline imposed on the license or registrant. So here are some of the possible ones. A license or registration is granted with no other conditions, or it's merely denied, or a license can be granted and then the license can be put on probation, some of these other things. It could just be a simple public approval, which there's no other conditions usually in a public approval besides having a public document on the record. The license can be suspended. Usually, if there's a suspension, it's in addition to a probation order, and then the interim suspension order or PC-23 order, which is also a suspension. Those are just temporary ones until, that's for like basically emergency situations where the public is at risk right away, and we want to ensure that the public is protected. So we can seek an interim suspension order to stop that individual from practicing. We'd just be suspending the license so that they would, if they were practicing at all, it would be illegal for them to do that. One of the things that, thank you. One of the other things that could be stipulated is a surrender of license. And that can also happen at an administrative hearing, but that's pretty rare. Usually those are stipulated. And then license or registration revocation. This will happen if we don't get a response back or a notice of offense back from that individual. We can revoke the license or registration. And in also rare cases, an administrative law judge could also rule that the license or registration should be revoked. All right, next slide. Okay, so when a licensee or a registrant gets put on probation, this is intended to enhance consumer protection. So when that happens, we've got disciplinary guidelines that that determine what the terms and conditions of that probation will be, things that they'll have to comply with, like filing quarterly reports, in some cases having a worksite monitor. If it was an alcohol or drug related offense, they may have to do biological fluid testing or abstain from alcohol. And there's a bunch of other conditions that can be applied. So probation it's the direct attempt to address or correct the potential sources of consumer harm that's appropriate for what's been proven, and what the, anything that's been proven, we need to be able to address in that probation. And probation is usually between 3 and 5 years when it is granted, and that's a standard term for most cases. We want to make sure that it's long enough to where that behavior that's the potential for the consumer harm is being addressed, and adequately enough that it won't, if once probation is over, they won't reoffend in the same way. Okay, next slide. Okay, so once a person is on probation, there's different types of discipline that can be taken if they fall out of compliance with probation, or we get other complaints that show that they're violating other laws. And what we can do is file a petition to revoke probation if it's probation violation, and usually it'll be more than one probation violation. Say they're not making cost recovery payments, and they're also not reporting to their biological fluid testing center every day as what was ordered. Those are the types of things that we would seek to file a petition to revoke probation. Now, if there's another violation where, say, they broke the law, they got a conviction, then we would file an accusation and petition to revoke probation. So the petition to revoke probation is only to address those violations of probation, and an accusation would be any new charges that come up. Okay, next slide. Okay, and that wraps it up. Thank you for your time. There will be more trainings provided at future board meetings. I hope this was informational, and if there's any other questions, I'll be happy to field those on now. And if there's any feedback also, I'm glad to hear that.
I actually had a question. Do you guys keep statistics on how many of those cases are settled, ultimately resolved by an ALJ, or maybe even dismissed? Do you guys keep numbers on those?
We do have records for that. All the decisions that we get, or that are effective, we keep for 75 years. So we do have those. I don't think we have them readily available right now. Couldn't tell you what that is, but the vast majority are settled.
And then when we send a request for disciplinary action to the Deputy Attorney General or the Attorney General's office, do they ever decline, or do they ever refuse in a particular case because they feel the investigation wasn't good enough, or maybe we can't meet our burden of proof?
Yes, that they do get pushed back on us sometimes. I've been at the board since 2012, and I've only seen maybe 2 cases get pushed back. Usually what we want to do in the enforcement unit is make sure that we can prove these. We want to think, like, what will the judge be seeing? And we don't even want to consider sending it to the Attorney General's office until we think we've got a pretty solid case where we're not going to have it pushed back from the Attorney General's office, or that we'll lose in court.
And have there been instances where they've dismissed a case even though they've accepted it, like during the course of the litigation?
There has been a few dismissals, and that was the one I'm thinking of was it was a sexual related case, and that came down to the witness's testimony that didn't. Something happened with it where, we had collected all the information we could. The Attorney General had all the information they needed, but it just didn't wash out when it actually went to hearing.
Thanks, Brad.
Absolutely, thank you.
Hey, Brad, this is Jeff Garcia. I have a question. So a very good presentation, by the way, but so the cases that you're describing are the serious cases that would rise to the level of board member knowledge. How about the other ones that are more administrative, maybe are just handled in-house? you have any idea how many of those we handle throughout the year?
Well, as far as complaints that we get, it's around 400 a year. As far as the cases that we send to the Attorney General's office, it's a handful of those. It's I would say less than 1% get sent to the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
We also have the ability to do citations and things like that. But those are fairly rare also.
Actually, if I can add on to Jeff's questions, I don't know if this is going to be a part of a future enforcement training, but it seems to me that this segment of the training doesn't cover the citation process, where the EO has the opportunity to impose like up to $2,500 in fines per violation. I would like to know more about that citation process. That was the battle. That's how the battle with Stanton Optical started.
Right. Yeah, and I believe we have that on the agenda for a future board meeting.
Okay.
Citations are administrative, and what I just went through is discipline or formal discipline. So citations aren't considered discipline, and they don't last as long either. So they're public. Citations are public for 5 years, whereas discipline lasts for 75 years or until the respondent passes.
I'm sorry, Brad. So the citation process, is that going to be the subject of a separate training?
I'm not sure if it'll be its own training, but it is going to be part of a future training. Yes.
Okay, that'd be good, because it is a segment in enforcement that I don't think the board really knows about or what direction or what the statistics are. I don't know if they are included in the quarterly enforcement statistics.
Yeah, they should be in those.
Okay.
But yeah, the board won't have to vote on citations unless it gets appealed by the respondent to get an administrative hearing, and then it'll have to go through the administrative hearing process before the board would know about them.
Yeah, I get that, and that's good. I'm just wondering at what level the board should have oversight of citations. I mean, in the worst case scenario, we could have an EO, and sure, it certainly is not that EO going crazy, issuing tons of citations on an area that may not be warranted, or contrarily, it may be an area that the citations are warranted, and maybe it's something the board should know, that, oh my gosh, there are a lot of citations in this area. Perhaps we need to work legislatively, but just to get a sense of the kind of violation trends too. So
definitely.
Those are my thoughts. I'm sorry, Jeff, I jumped in on your question.
No, Mark, actually, that's kind of, you actually got my train of thought. So that was kind of my next question was, do we have, and you asked the question, do we have some idea of how many citations are within, certain groupings, to see if we have a large number in a certain area that need to be addressed, or if they're kind of just scattered uniformly throughout several different categories. So, I think that would be interesting to see.
Thank you both, Shara, Executive Officer Murphy. I think it sounds like we've got some really good questions that I think certainly would fill out a 30-minute training on citations. So we as staff will prioritize that for the next quarterly board meeting. Although we do not have the types of citations, categorized in our publicly available data, there is the DCA open data portal. This is, I think, going back to both Dr. Garcia and Board Member Yu's questions, and then also our most recent Sunset report. So the DCA open data portal can be reached easily from dca.ca.gov, and it actually allows you to create your own sort of dashboard in order to look at these statistics of both licensing and enforcement for a particular board, but also to compare different boards across DCA. The annual report of the Department of Consumer Affairs is also another place where this data is collected. The DCA portal is updated quarterly when we submit our reports, and it is dynamic. So I think it's the most reliable and the best way to really go and take a look at how boards are doing in their cycle times and you know, quantities of violations. But then again, also too, as I said, the most recent Sunset report does also discuss our licensing and enforcement statistics and give some narrative in order to kind of flesh out an understanding of those statistics. But again, DCA Open Data Portal is a great, frequently updated and easy to sort of navigate way to take a look at statistics on the optometry board and all of the boards under Department of Consumer Affairs.
I'm sure if I can jump in here too. If you're curious of anything that we've posted recently, you can always check our website. We post blurbs when we do issue new actions. That includes accusations, statement of issues, citations, any decisions that are final. Those are, you can just click through our on the website through consumer, and you can see all the citations and disciplinary actions in there.
Jeff, if you're finished, I have some questions too.
I am finished. Thank you.
So, Brad, if you can, or if the moderator can scroll back, there was something about interim orders, emergency suspensions, something like that. Interim suspension order, PC 23 order. This could be part of another training session, but I'd like to know a little bit more about those orders. I know they're very rare, but I guess one question I have is there at the staff level an automatic consideration of an interim suspension order if there is a allegation or some understanding that a patient has been injured by an optometrist in an enforcement case? I can think of a case in the past where the board members in reviewing the case thought that an optometrist should have had his license, or that he should have been under some sort of supervision or suspension based on his negligence or gross negligence listed in an enforcement either decision or other matter, but because the process would take so long for a hearing to revoke or suspend the optometrist, the board was forced to vote for a simple probation just to get things rolling and to protect patients. That was a very distasteful way of addressing an optometrist that could be dangerous. So, does the staff ever consider interim suspension orders, and is there an automatic trigger, perhaps, that whenever someone's injured that be considered?
Any case that we get where there's consumer harm, evident consumer harm, and we know we have enough evidence to say that we need to act on it right away, that's when we'll go that route. But yeah, like you said, it's a rare thing, and that's a rare case too. I'm thinking of what kind of cases these could be. Say we get a subsequent arrest notice, and it's got like murder or some, a serious crime on there. We'll want to at least get the police record first before we go for the suspension. And if it's a settlement, we would also want to get some record first before we take that action. But we would prioritize obtaining those documents as day one actions to at least figure out what we need to do with them.
And does staff have access to experts? I mean, I know none of you are optometrists, yes. And if an optometrist were to look at some allegations, they might say, "Oh my gosh, this professional is clearly incompetent and risking their patients." Do you have
yes.
access to experts at an early stage so that they can chime in on patient harm?
Yeah, we do have access to experts. We're actually trying to get more experts on board. But yeah, we do send cases regularly to our expert.
The other question I have is regarding probation supervision. Are the items that are monitored when someone is on probation, and I'm not using the right term. It's not probation. It's an element of probation where they have monitoring by
Like a worksite monitor or
worksite monitoring. Yeah, there you go.
okay.
Is the worksite monitoring, is that again, I'm not using the right term. Is that cookie cutter? Does the monitor just use a template or a cookie cutter kind of checkoff list, or is the monitoring specific to the underlying violation? You know,
They are specific to the underlying violation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what those forms look like, but they are specific.
And who tells the monitor what the monitor should be monitoring? So if the respondent has violated improper prescription writing, who tells the monitor, well, you got to watch him issuing prescriptions? Or if it's bookkeeping or whatnot, you got to monitor this particular aspect. Who monitors, or who directs the monitor to as to their monitoring?
That'll be spelled out in the order, and
I'm sorry, what order?
in the decision. So it'll be one of the probation conditions. So it could be worksite. I don't know the correct words, but we would have the worksite monitor provide a quarterly report, and they would audit the records depending on the violation. So yeah, if the prescriptions are off, or they're missing diagnoses or something like that, then they'll audit.
Perhaps, Brad, I hate to break in on you. Perhaps we can have Terry Villarreal, who is our current probation monitor, or Cherie, who has been our probation monitor in the past, give some detail. It is certainly a specialized job, one that takes a lot of time, and both of those folks have dedicated lots of hours to monitoring and enforcing those orders. So I don't know if either Cherie or Terry want to provide some additional comment.
Yes, that would be helpful, because in approving these orders, I don't ever see any specificity as to what the worksite monitor is supposed to be monitoring. I think the orders usually worksite monitor for a certain amount of time.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Terry Villarreal, the lead enforcement analyst.
I can hear you. This
Okay.
Is yeah, hi.
Okay, sorry. It seems like there's a little bit of an echo. Yes. One of the conditions of probation is worksite monitoring, and I'm the probation monitor. So depending upon what is in the required terms of probation for any particular case is what we would monitor. And the individual is required to submit reports within 30 calendar days of the effective date of the decision. They are to provide us, just to let you know, the worksite monitor, the explanation that we are using is included in the uniform standards related to substance abuse and disciplinary guidelines. So when terms of probation are issued for respondents, these guidelines are chosen and put into place, and one of them is a worksite monitor. Worksite monitor. So just going back to that, however long the term of probation is the amount of time that a worksite monitor has to submit reports to the board. And that is the way that we can ensure that the individual, the respondent, is following the terms of this particular condition of his probation. So the report is very detailed, and if there's any deviation from what the disciplinary guidelines state and what's in the order, I immediately notify the respondent and obtain more information, and I inquire what's the reason for the deviation of this issue, and I request an explanation for it. So it is very detailed, and it's monitored closely by me.
So I'm not sure I heard a precise answer to my question. So if a optometrist has been found to be issuing improperly issuing prescriptions, who directs the monitor to monitor their prescription writing practice? Do we need to include that in the board's order, or or does someone else do that?
It would all depend. There's different conditions of probation, and remedial education is one of them, which we would direct the respondent to take college level courses in that particular field to ensure that they are not doing that anymore. And just to and just because their license is on probation, it's not likely that they want to deviate from the probation order.
Okay.
The probation monitor directs the worksite monitor, and we review those reports closely, and if there's a violation in any area of the probation, then we immediately contact the respondent.
Okay, but would the report cover prescription writing in my particular hypothetical?
It can.
Okay.
It can. It would have to be in the decision and order, specifically outlined in one of the conditions of probation.
I see. Yes.
This is Cherie. Also, remember the decision and order spells out what's been violated and what those the probation terms are. So when we give that information to the worksite monitor, they're aware of what the situation is, what the licensee did that got them put on probation, and what the requirements of monitoring are. So that comes from us as the probation monitor to the worksite monitor, who then provides the reports directly to us.
Okay. Good. I think I have my question answered. Excuse me. I think the board probably needs to look at their orders and cases and perhaps be more specific if that's necessary. At a future point, I'd be interested in seeing a sample probation report and see kind of what categories they cover and how they're written. That would be helpful for my education. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's Dave. One quick question. Brad or Terry, when a consumer lodges or anybody lodges a complaint against a licensee, how long does it take for the board to just acknowledge that the complaint was received?
We're required to acknowledge the complaint within 10 days. And I believe that should be on our cycle time reporting, our performance metrics. We're usually around 3 days.
Thanks, Brad.
Absolutely.
So are there any more questions for enforcement or comments? Nope. Okay, well then let's go ahead and move on to, presentation on optometry initial licensing process. Oh. Or 11B, sorry, Shar.
No, that's quite all right. I am actually realizing that there is a discrepancy in the agenda, that this presentation is regarding canceled licenses and restorations. It appears that the presentation from last board meeting on initial licensing process was agendized instead. Council, are we able to continue forward with the presentation on canceled licenses and restorations, or are we only able to discuss optometry initial licensing process?
This is Natalia. This is only the canceled licenses into restoration process. We covered the initial licensing process last board meeting.
Yeah, Natalia, our current board meeting agenda though for today lists optometry initial licensing process. So I'm just wondering from council, since we should present the material that the public is aware we are going to present. They were not aware that we would be discussing canceled licenses and restorations because the agenda does not state that. It states that we're doing optometry initial licensing process. So I'm just asking council if this is close enough to continue, or if we need to postpone this for a time and it can be properly agendized.
I think you do need to postpone this presentation because it's not on the agenda. Frankly, you said it better than I, but
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
We apologize, board members, that there was this disconnect between the posting of the agenda and the intended presentation. We will return to you. We can, of course, have conversations about optometry initial licensing process if that is so desired by the board. We have come through a pretty ruckus initial optometry application season, and of course would be willing to discuss any of that proposed processes or procedures as the board wishes.
Well, Shar, do you just want to tell everybody about this most recent application process and and changes that licensing may implement for next year? Are we allowed to talk about that?
Yes, I think that fits into the presentation that is expected here. So yes, so each year, of course, as our optometry students near graduation, we get an influx of initial applications. These begin with the application for examination. So taking a request to take the California Law and Regulations exam. We counsel students to generally take this at least 6 months before graduation, as we know that our testing bank only allows us to update tests every 6 months. And so if you are unsuccessful in your first attempt, you are required to wait 6 months in order to be given a test with fresh questions that can't be easily answered from having seen a previous test. From that point, then we await the scores from the CLRE. Applicants are able to open their next phase of application by paying initial fees and by providing their snapshots, their headshots, their background check, fingerprint background check. And I should probably just have to tell you step here and here to make sure I'm not missing anything. So then at that point, we await graduation so that we are able to receive transcripts from the school from that individual applicant. And then we also receive scores from the National Board of Examiners in Optometry. And that is for all 4 of the tests that are required for initial licensure for an optometry license. So that is the part 1, part 2, part 3, and the TMOD. All 4 are required to have passing scores before we are able to approve a license. So each year we try to get ourselves ready as much as possible in order to wait for the onslaught. But it does mean that this year we had more transcripts and more test scores arrive all at once. we had about a 30% increase in the number of applications we received. Some of that was due to out-of-state applications. And so we did struggle a bit this year in trying to process all of those transcripts and those applications. We have been striving since last year's license processor season to implement some of the changes within Breeze that allow us to better process more quickly for staff to have access to the information needed, particularly to independently look up NBEO scores. So we were able to make those changes. Unfortunately, though, they were enacted in May. So, of course, that's after a majority of our graduates from this year had already started their applications. But we have improved that. And so applications for next year will immediately include what's called the OE tracker number, through which the board can automatically go to NBEO's website and receive receive score reports and enter those into our licensing system so that we might process a license. Natalia, there are a couple of other really great business modernization objects that you spearheaded that we were able to have added to our licensing system, but that were not implemented in that 6 to 9 months before graduation, so as to really improve timelines for this year's graduating class. Can you just remind us of a couple of those other Breeze improvements that were implemented in the spring and summer that will improve our processing next year?
Sure, I definitely do that. One of probably the most important ones that we did was a letter was created to send to applicants after they've been passed their California laws and regulations exam that lets them know that we've received that information from PSI, our third-party administrator for the exam, that they have passed and they can now continue their application. Previously, they may not have known, they didn't get a notification, they weren't sure when it would appear on Breeze, our licensing application. So now Breeze automatically sends a notice saying that they can apply for part 2 of the examination, which has been incredibly helpful for a lot of our candidates. As Shar said, now the OE tracker number is collected on the application, so we don't have to wait for NBEO to send us their exam scores. We also changed the wordings of the applications themselves to make it clear to applicants how it's best to make it easier for us to contact them. We've stressed emails. We've better laid out the process within the application so they understand what exactly is going to happen and what to expect to improve our communication to our candidates. Some things that are still being implemented, just recently, actually the beginning of November, applicants can now submit attachments online instead of having to email them. Maybe they've submitted the application yesterday and they realize, oh goodness, I forgot my photo. They can submit a new application to submit that photo so it's there for us when we go to review their application. There have been a lot of other small text changes to make sure things have been clear, but those have been the major ones that have definitely helped us not only process applications quicker, but to communicate with our candidates more smoothly.
And so we do just want to recognize and apologize to our applicants this year that, again, it was a much slower licensing season than normal. We typically try to have all licenses posted by the end of August, middle of September. We were pushed to October this year. And the improvements that Natalia has mentioned are huge, particularly the ability to enter attachments directly to the system. This licensing season and all those previous, we are working with basically an email inbox where we've got to identify attachments, download them to a server, and then upload them to Breeze. It's pretty time intensive and leads itself to, less than efficient structures of filing that also then, increase the amount of time that staff has to use in order to ensure that all requirements are present on an application. So we're excited that there will be an easier process for applicants to provide those documents to us. That, as Natalia mentioned, the OE tracker, those were also sent by email, and they were sent in mass. And so if we had an issue with downloading a score report, we would have to go to the applicant, ask for that OE tracker number, wait for them to respond, and then manually go to the NBEO website in order to download that score report. So the ability for first us to have the information when the application is first completed, we can go in there and get it ourselves. And then also too, if you know, an applicant is aware that a score might not have been associated, a score report might not have been associated with California, that does come directly from, so actually I apologize, pardon me, back that up, because of course, students aren't able to provide us either transcripts or score reports. Those have to come directly from the academic institution or from NBEO. But the ability to provide us with the background checks and photo and headshot, if there is a missing piece, will also greatly improve our processing time. We've also, now that we've gotten past this really busy licensing season, been able to effectuate the hires that we have been working on since fall of last year. So we're happy to have included a new licensing management services technician who is being cross-trained on both the optician program and the optometry program. Natalia is also spearheading with the entry of that new staff member, that we are cross-training our existing staff as well. So in past years, we've had one analyst working on that huge crush of initial optometry licenses. This year, we had 1.5 staff resources working on that huge rush, or huge crush of initial applications. Next year, we will have, as long as we can keep all of our fantastic folks, we'll have 4 folks who understand the optometry initial licensing process and who are able to take parts of that and then move the application to be approved by Natalia or another senior licensing analyst who is clearly knowledgeable of the process and clear about requirements. So again, we want to, I think, just take this unexpected opportunity to apologize to our stakeholders and to our applicant community that this year was rougher than it has been. Know that with COVID last year, we're immediately working to improve. And of course, not everything gets implemented as you'd like it to. So we weren't able to effectuate those changes before this graduating class, but we do anticipate that the graduation season of 2022 will run much smoother and will follow what have been previously typical timelines for licensure.
Shara?
Can I make a comment? It's Glenn. So first off, Natalia, one of the things I've always appreciated about you is you're an outside the box thinker. And as we continue to roll forward with enhancements to Breeze, if you could just keep us up to date on things that you want or have asked for, and then just update us on whether it's come through or not, just so that if we ever need to support, and as the board asks the DCA to prioritize, you have that support from us. So, but thanks for all the work you're doing. I know it was a rough year, but thanks for all that hard work.
Definitely, and that's something I can continue to and expand upon, include in future board meetings.
Thank you.
Shara? Hello?
Yes, Dr. Turetsky, of course.
It's Dave. I don't even know if this is something that's possible, but I received probably a half dozen phone call from optometrists who were looking to hire a new optometrist to work with them, but those people hadn't gotten their license. They wanted to know what's going on. And I had nothing to tell them. And per your instructions, don't bother the staff and don't try to ask for favors. So I didn't. But I think one of the biggest issues that we ran into, aside from the delays themselves, was just the lack of information. That people want to call somebody and just hear a person tell them something, what's going on, so they know they're not forgotten. Is there any way that the board could have somebody acting, a volunteer, a licensee who can act as a volunteer, not getting paid, during licensing season, to act as an ombudsperson and be a contact that somebody can go through, have a human being to speak to, and that human being can go to the board instead of trying to take up board staff time answering questions that somebody else could answer for them?
Natalia's not the only one who thinks out of the box, Dr. Kawaguchi. That isn't something that we thought of before. There was a question earlier, though, about whether or not we're able to, handle intern capacity. Anyone who works in our office, who works with any of our files or has access to our office at all, does have to be Quorum cleared. So they need to have background checks and be approved to view licensee and enforcement files. So it is a sort of time-intensive process and resource-intensive process, quite honestly, in order to bring in interns, volunteers, or ombudsmen, as you're speaking of. That really is very much the impetus behind our cross-training and having more folks who understand the process. This year was very difficult because the person who could give you the information, Natalia, was the person who was jamming away on licensing individuals. And so, we of course needed to prioritize time in those folks who had, complete applications and who we could process. And so sometimes it's true, those calls and emails did not get returned. And again, that's one of the reasons why we sincerely apologize to our applicants and our licensees who are looking to hire. That cross-training is really the point, is that folks will understand the system, can go into Breeze, say, well, oh, I can see here in your file that you don't have this, this, or this, or you do have this, but it looks as though you're this rank in the queue. So we are doing that cross-training so that more folks are able to navigate the system and give more information to applicants. We're also excited that we've been approached as a possible board, or a board to possibly participate in what Department of Consumer Affairs is called Enlightened Licensing. It's a department-wide initiative that is started with the Board of Registered Nursing, where a board agrees to open up their licensing process to other licensing subject matter experts. So folks from dental board, folks from medical board, folks from construction, folks from architecture, to say this is how we accept our information, these are our requirements, and this is what we do. It's been incredibly helpful for the Board of Bureau of Registered Nursing, and we're hoping that is something that we'll be able to take part in the spring as well, so that we can also say, this is how we do it, and this is what we ask for. Are there ways that we could improve our system, or ways where possibly we could provide more information within Breeze so that folks can see, oh, they haven't received my transcripts, like actual status checks. And there is one board within DCA who's been able to effectuate that change for their licensees. So we're excited to hopefully be a part of that Enlightened Licensing initiative so that we can figure out how our system might take on those kind of complexities so that our applicants are empowered to get onto Breeze and know real time, have they received my transcript? Have they received my background check? And have a little more assurance that the process is moving, although slowly, but that it is actually moving. So we are certainly trying to make sure that we can have better communication this coming year, again, by cross-training folks who can actually navigate the system and give real in-time updates, but then also too in looking at how we might be able to better utilize our software systems and in order to provide an access for status checks for applicants.
Okay.
Yes, of course. So we of course can look at volunteers.
We have to have something in place though, where somebody can speak to a human being, because what was on the boards, I believe it was on the answering machine, I think it was on the website, was don't bug the board to find out your license status.
We would never, of course, use language such as that, but we do.
I'm paraphrasing.
Thank you. Just
I'm
just to be
paraphrasing,
clear,
but it was pretty well.
we do make it clear currently. We've made it clear on our voicemail, on our website, in our email replies that we don't have enough staff to have someone go in and do a status check. Again, as I said, Natalia is the one person who has worked on this the last 2 years. We were able to add another half resource this year. But unfortunately, we just didn't have the staff resources in order to have folks get those calls returned or those emails returned with actual information, because we don't have enough folks trained on the licensing process to be able to go in and take a look at an applicant's application and tell them, okay, this is where you are, or this is what is needed, this is what has been attached, or this is what we have not received. So that really is, like I said, the impetus of cross-training our licensing staff so that we have folks who understand how the Breeze application works, how you process an initial application, and when calls come into the office, can answer live and say, great, what's your file number? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's available here on your application. I see that you have all of your requirements available. They have been checked. It appears that you're in queue to be processed or issued a license within the next 5 to 7 days. That we've got to really have people who are trained to understand the licensing process to be able to provide that kind of information from through live phone support or more timely email response.
Sure, I get it. I mean, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on David's concerns in that I get it that we don't have currently the ability to give a substantive answer to people who might call in or write in about their license status. I get it. But I think it's important that somebody respond to calls, voicemails, and emails saying that. These inquiries cannot just go into a black hole and with no response.
And we completely agree with that. When we were given the information that responses were coming in or communication was coming in and not being returned, Cherie and I myself began going through those email inboxes, making attachments to applications, processing applications, and issuing licenses. Again, we've had the unfortunate and also fantastic opportunity to have Natalia running this program, but she's one person. And so in order to make timelines, we have allocated her staff resource to processing licenses. And we were not aware that there was so much communication coming in that hadn't been responded to. When stakeholders made us aware of that, we immediately allocated the resources we could, myself and our executive officer, to answering those communications and engaging in the licensing process as we could. I pulled the trigger a couple times this season, guys. I personally issued licenses.
and I'm not. This is not necessarily meant as a criticism of you or your staff. I get it. And maybe this is something we need to take up with our budgetary authorities or the legislature to tell them, listen, we have so much work. We don't even have people to answer the phones and answer the emails. We are so busy with our licensing or our enforcement, whatever. Because I think that's really kind of public service number one, is to respond to calls, even if it's just to say, I can't give you an answer.
Yes, we hear you most certainly. And that's important for stakeholders, constituents, consumers to know that they're not going into a black hole. And so we certainly hear that criticism and are making sure that we can, in the rest of this cycle, as we still are receiving applications from folks out of state, and into next cycle, be better prepared and better staffed and trained in order to give that kind of live and timely support to inquiries.
Budget change.
Shara, in the past, this is Sid, in the past we had, I don't know if they were called annuitants or what the position was, where we could bring in not just interns, but retirees and others to support the board during peak workload. Why aren't we making that a regular part of our staff? When I'm coming up on 8 years, this hasn't changed. It's always been a deficit and an issue with answering phones and timely response to constituents, let alone the professional members.
So Sid, I will tell you that I know that's not the first time that I've heard you say it. And it is something we did take action on last year. So as we got through COVID, we began to make inquiries to retired annuitants. So DCA employees with or former retired DCA employees with licensing experience who would come back and be a part of our process. We actively searched for those folks through the last year. Part of the issue was COVID. Folks were finding themselves relocating and then not being able to commit to an training and then a season of licensing. But we certainly did pursue retired annuitants for both our licensing and our enforcement staff as we continue to endure staff turnover and staff change. We just unfortunately weren't able to find appropriate resources. That is also too a normal HR process. So it does mean that we're also then posting that position, allowing time for that position to be answered to, going through an impartial review of applications, going through interviews, and then having that person processed, even if they have been in the system before, still processed for this new position. So we were pursuing both of those things in tandem over the last year, looking for retired annuitants and actually just not just posting, but doing actual, physical recruiting, not physical, but but actual, we've got lists of those who have recently retired from boards and DCA who were in licensing roles, me making those phone calls and sending out those emails to ask if they could come and be trained on our system to help us out through our graduation system or our graduation season. We also, all throughout the last year, have worked on bringing on that MST. Unfortunately, because of just the required HR processes, we were able to bring on that MST. I think maybe Monica's been with us a month. And so it was, we started that process in earnest in March of 2021, and just through regular processing, weren't able to get someone interviewed, hired, processed, and in our office until September. So I want you to know that you have made those comments before. They have not fallen on deaf ears. It is certainly something that we dedicated resources to, and I dedicated time to myself in order to try and improve.
Thank you.
It's Glenn. I got one more connected but different topic related to this. So Arbo has resurrected a committee that's going to be working on licensure mobility across different states. And so when we're bombarded in season, plus we might have existing optometrists in other states that want to come to California, just adds to the burden. And so they've resurrected a committee that I'm a part of to try to oversee a process to help states to move doctors from state to state. And so will be probably more information coming to the board related to that, to see if that could also help us in this regard.
Thank you, Dr. Kawaguchi, for that recognition and that information. If there are any other questions from the board.
I have one question, just kind of related more to Breeze, I guess. Is the board pretty much limited to only using the Breeze system? Could the board ever look to, I don't know, like other outside consultants or third-party providers of various software-related services to kind of like, patch it in with Breeze, or is it pretty much just limited to Breeze and its own capabilities?
So the Breeze installation that we have, the implementation was started in, I'm going to say, and of course Jessica's not here, who was most influential in this, in 2015, somewhere between 2014, 2016. We're still making improvements to that system. Those are the business modification objects that Natalia's been running, those improvements to Breeze. So we are at this point locked into Breeze. It has been an initiative of DCA overall, and I've been proud to be a part of a task force on how we improve our ability to plug and play. Exactly that. So how do we improve Breeze in order to bring applications in on top? One of the things that we've often talked about here, Board Member Linden, is the ability to bring in the information, additional information within OE Tracker. So graduates are given their OE Tracker number, and that's how they are tracked for their examination scores. But then they also have the opportunity to use that OE Tracker number to track their continuing education as they continue into their profession. And wouldn't it be lovely if we could plug a part of OE Tracker into Breeze so that we're able to more efficiently and on the back end process who has completed those continuing education courses and not take staff time to perform those audits. So it has been an initiative of DCA's department-wide to look at how we can move to more plug and play and allowing applications to sit on top of. And it is something that we are thinking about ourselves here in OE Tracker. It is a process. And so we are best in making the changes that what we have here, but then participating again in those initiatives and bringing together those who have outside applications and our internal IT team, which is something you're going to see us doing beginning in the fall around OE Tracker, figuring out if there is a way to create data bridge or a way to plug and play so that we're able to use that data. And there might be, in fact, we're again pursuing the way that registered nursing has provided that online status check. We believe that might be a plug and play. So we're going to look into whether or not that is what that is, and if that might be something that we can set on top of our installation for Breeze. With that, board members, our intention was to submit to you the remaining reports by written report. They are available in your materials and also on the website for the public. If there are, though, questions the board would like to ask regarding the legislative and regulatory update, our outreach and communications update, or our strategic plan update, we of course could take those now. I'm remembering that there was one particular call out. I was so very happy to see this as I was reviewing our memos for this board meeting. Mark, if you'll unmute yourself and just give the little tidbit of information you've got on our social media. That was the one thing I wanted to make sure that we gave you guys front and center here today.
Surely. So outreach, we've started at the behest of our strategic plan. We've started to track our social media metrics and track our posts and everything. And this is something that I do personally. And one of the things that I found in my research with what other boards are doing is that we have a much more robust social media presence than a lot of other boards, including, for example, the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, which has 560,000 licensed unit folks. They only have 779 followers on Twitter. Pardon me. Physical Therapy Board, which is similar in size to ours, has 733 followers. So, yeah, we've got 866 followers, and we have a much smaller program than, for example, Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. Other boards don't post like we do. We post pretty regularly. We do have some interaction as the data shows. And our social media, it's growing slowly. Now, we're not actively going out and trying to be, optometry influencers and everything like that, but a lot of the big national associations follow us. A lot of individual optometry influencers, if we can characterize them like that, follow us. So we do get some traction with our social media work. And if you refer to your attachment, it just shows some of the metrics that we have and that we use for our reporting.
Thank you, Mark. So with that, it's our intention to close out our presentations on item number 11, offer the opportunity for board members to again ask any questions or make any comments, and then if the board president, Madam Wong, if you'd like to open up for public comment, we of course are willing to answer any questions the public might have had about the licensing season.
Great, thanks, Shara. Are there any other comments from board members? Madam Moderator, if you could open up Q&A for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit the requests. All right, looks like we have a request from Ruby Garcia. Ruby, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now.
I just want to thank the board very much, and especially Shara and all staff. I know it's horrendous, and I really appreciate the discussion. And of course, anything that the California board, the California State Society for Opticians can do for you, I know what we have suggested. And Shara, you know that we have good support for you, and when you're ready, we'd be more than happy to help you with that too. But thank you very much for the discussion.
All right, that appears to be our only request for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, and with that, Madam President, we're left with items 10 and items 12. Item 10 is the presentation and discussion of 2022 board and committee meeting dates. Those are listed within your meeting materials. It is not necessary for those to be approved by the board. That gives us flexibility if we find that a date we are not able to achieve quorum, we can reschedule that. But if there are comments that the board or public would like to give to us regarding the dates that have been made public, we of course would love to take that feedback.
Does anyone have any comments about their dates right now? About the future dates?
I know I have a conflict with one of the dates, but at this point I don't know if it'll affect quorum or anything like that.
You can go ahead and put out the date. What date?
It's the March 4th meeting date.
Oh. Yeah, actually I have a conflict with March 4th. Sorry. All right, and does anyone have any other conflicts of any other dates?
It's Dave. No conflicts or anything because I don't have the dates. I was unable to download that one specific part of the packet. So,
well,
Shara, if you could just email it to me so I have it, that would be great.
Of course, Dr. Turecki.
Thank you.
So I guess we will just discuss these dates at a future meeting. So then let's
move forward. I apologize. Yeah, we'll continue to work to obtain quorum for each of these dates. If we do come upon a conflict or a time when we are unable, then we will come back to the board with another suggestion. So thank you very much. I don't know if there's any public input on the dates as well. We always try to be sensitive to religious and cultural holidays, but of course, if there's something that our stakeholders have caught, I would love to hear that feedback.
Do we need public comment on this?
Yes, Madam President.
Okay. Madam Moderator, if you could open up Q&A for public comment regarding future board meeting dates.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Looking forward, let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 12, future agenda items. Does anyone have any suggestions for future agenda items? No?
Madam President, this is Jeff Garcia. I have one, and it's really not new because I know we've discussed it several times. In fact, just a few minutes ago, Shara mentioned it. But looking at the potential of incorporating OE tracker into our system, when the time is appropriate, maybe it would be a good idea to have our board representative come in and give us some information on how this could be possible. And this is after, Shara, that you do your groundwork, of course. But I think potentially that, as you said, this could be a huge time-saving thing for us and really give us the ability to track our licensees' CEs much easier. So just a suggestion. Thank you.
Oh, I agree with Dr. Garcia's suggestion. And we heard a little bit of public comment earlier from Doug Major, who spoke about some ongoing work with, I think, Children's Now regarding increasing access to children. And I would just love to hear more about that or see what progress has been made or what we can do. I don't know if that's more appropriate for a future board meeting or for the at the Legislation Regulation Committee, but I would love to hear more about that.
Well, certainly, and we apologize as staff that we weren't able to reach out to Dr. Major before I do at the very top of my to-do list here, make that contact. So I know that in the legislature you probably work with Children Now too, and it's a great organization that really does have a lot of great data and understanding of healthcare and wellness issues around children. So we will certainly make the effort to make that connection and look at bringing some content to the Leg Reg committee so that the board might be able to further discuss how it could engage in that initiative.
Sure, I don't know if we got this from the earlier discussion on enforcement matters, but I still have a lot of questions about the citation system and worksite monitoring. Just strikes it just occurs to me that if an ALJ orders worksite monitoring and doesn't specify what things should be monitored, I think the board's hands are tied. We can't alter that. We may or may not be able to alter that order without having an additional hearing. So the process seems very unclear to me still.
Certainly, I do have in my notes here that we would do a session specifically on citations and a session specifically on probation. I forced staff to change their schedule last time, so I can't commit that it will be next board meeting, but they are on our list, and we will, I believe, be able to bring you that content within 2022.
That's great. I still have a term in 2022, so.
Nice, Mark. Are there any other future agenda items that members would like to suggest? No? Well, then that basically ends it up for the agenda, except for our closed session.
Madam President, we do need to take public comment on the future agenda items item. Forgive me that.
I seem to always forget public comment. I apologize. Madam Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for public comment again, please.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, looks like we have a request for comment from Ruby Garcia. Ruby, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I'll request to unmute your microphone now.
Yes, thank you. I noticed that there was a future agenda item there about the low passing rate for opticians. And given that the DOC has not been able to meet, next year there is going to be at least a total of 11 optician programs opening up and a statewide apprenticeship program opening up for opticians. And so looking at the passing rate and also educational resources, how quickly can we have these discussions? And maybe we should not bypass the DOC, but that is an important agenda item that we want to address.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay, so looking forward, we are now on agenda item 13, which is closed session.
We will just remind the public that the board will enter closed session and will be adjourning from closed session. There will not be additional publicly available content for this meeting today. So thank you all stakeholders, board members. We've got to step out now too, as we're not part of your closed session. And just say thank you very much for your time today and the discussion. I think we had some really good in-depth, and it's wonderful to have our board just about full and to have so much diversity of opinion and thought and thinking outside of the box. It is a pleasure for us as staff to hear all of you and understand your intent and your guiding policy for the board. So thank you so very much. And then, of course, thank you to our stakeholders who participated with us today.
Cheryl, how do we log out and log back in?
They'll actually just kick everybody else out.
Oh, so we'll, the board members should stay logged in.
Board members should stay logged in. Even if public tries to stay, we'll be kicked out. So
thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. I'm going to go ahead and get that closed session set up. So let me go ahead and stop the recording. And then